Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. First thing to do is act on the agenda. I move that we act on the agenda as written. All those in favor?
Aye.
The next thing we need to do is act on the minutes.
I move that we approve them as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public comment.
Hey,
Here we all look at you.
You're the public.
yeah. So I just came down because first off, everywhere I go, people talking about the reappraisals and stuff. But I wanted to say, I met with them. They explained their formula. You know, there was like anytime you use a formula, things get compounded if it's off a little bit. But they were really good. And you know, if you read through the book, pretty much a lot of things are closer to where they should be now. So, but that brings up everybody's complaining. But so I wanted to follow up. The board at one point had gone through and started closing some of these public driveways, and we still have more of them. And so I'm just curious when, you know, people complaining about their taxes. Well, if we get a few more of those off so the town doesn't have to take care of them. So I was just curious when the town was going to continue.
And that's a good question. I actually was going to refer to Charlie when we got to the road commissioner's report. That was one of my questions, and so thank you for bringing it up. Because
Yeah, so I was just kind of,
it is something.
I just wanted to see if there was, because in fairness to the other people that have roads that have been closed, you know, it's either reopen all those.
Right, Susan?
You've stolen my prepared speech for the evening. But I was going to wait for the
It was
road.
probably going to be a lot better.
No, it was identical to what you said.
Good
Just
for you.
so, but I guess I'm just gonna
Well, then
not
I
gonna
guess
say
I'll
anything
hang
till we
out.
get to the road
See where it
commissioner's
goes.
report.
Well, thank you for bringing that up.
But I did want to say, you know, everybody complaining about the parade, but those guys, you know, when I met with them, they really did. I mean, the way they explained it, and then Jonathan was a huge help.
Right.
I mean, and like I said, anytime you use a formula,
Right.
if something's off by a little bit, it compounds quickly, and they were very receptive to correcting things.
Susan?
Just for the benefit of, I mean, one thing that surprised me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but since I've been on the select board, I did learn that like the road access to properties is not taken into consideration, I believe, by the listers. Is that correct? Am I correct in saying that? I mean, that sort of
It can affect the value.
Okay.
So for example, I don't have road frontage on my property, but I have a deeded right of way, and that did make a slight difference in my value.
So whether the town maintains a road or not doesn't.
That part they didn't take into
That doesn't.
account.
That was my understanding. That took me by surprise, honestly, when I first, before I was introduced to the select board stuff. I just assumed, oh, you know, you got this town maintained road, your taxes would definitely reflect that. My understanding is that it doesn't. So it's something that people don't generally know.
So I was just going to say, you're right, because you and I both thought the same thing, that
Okay,
it did
good.
affect it,
Glad.
but it does not. We both learned that it doesn't, because what happened was that there were some people who came in and assumed that that was the case. And in all actuality, it's not the case. Meaning, if the fact that we would plow your driveway or not plow your driveway has no bearing on your taxes, or even the resale value, really. It doesn't come into play. So, yeah, so you're right about that.
Well, I think
in
that
some
was
ways-
swayed from a real estate agent's perspective.
Yes.
I think if you hired a real estate agency to come in and sell your property, I think that's something that they used as a factor, but I don't think that it was necessarily all fact.
Right, it's not a real factor.
And some people do enjoy having a private road.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
Tremendously.
I can just say from, you know, I used to live up north in a town, and it was a continued issue with one road in particular because the town had to buy a single axle dump truck because there was a cul-de-sac on the end, and a single axle dump truck was the only thing that could make it around. And there was a reason that person stayed on the select board, was to keep their road open. But if you drove down that road, oh, they did not, I mean, they would get nasty because you were on a town road.
Right.
Yeah, so, and just for the safety of the road crew, some of these roads are either gonna have to be brought up to a certain standard
Yeah,
or get
right.
off the.
One of the things when I was on the town, just for history's sake, when I was on the board before, just as I was getting off the board, they were looking at throwing up a lot of these roads. And so what I now am, as I've looked into it, what they've done is thrown the roads up to the house as opposed to, I mean, beyond the house. And so there was no access beyond the house. Had I been on the board, I probably would have said, let's not do that. Let's give people access beyond the house because it's not fair to do, because you're creating somebody's private driveway.
Yeah.
But I wasn't on the board at that time. And sometimes I think, well, you know, if somebody wanted to keep the road open, it would, you know, what if we turned them back into trails that people could actually access? You know, not that that's what anyone would want to do, because obviously they wouldn't.
I'm just thinking, you know,
Yeah.
people complaining about the taxes, well, that's one way to start
Yeah.
getting a better game on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming.
All
And
right,
hey,
bye.
thank you for telling us about your perception of the way they all handled it over there. That's
Yeah,
nice
because
to
I
know.
came down here with like, oh, look what you got wrong, and you know, and they were really fair about
Yeah.
it.
Wow.
And like I said, Jonathan was a huge help in
Yeah.
explaining things.
It's really nice to hear that, because I don't think we
Everybody
hear that
has
side
taxes.
of it. And so thank you. That's,
And I think the worst job in
Appreciate
any town is
Yeah.
the,
right? The reappraisals and the taxes.
yeah, but the,
Assessor.
yeah, the assessors are, that's the most, nobody wants to see the assessor.
Okay, so moving on. New business is the purchasing policy. So, Charlie, I don't want to be like the. I'm not trying to pick on the road, what's going on the road crew or anything like that. But what's brought, I'm the one that brought this to the board because I had a few big ticket bills to sign, and I was like, whoa, that's a lot of money in 1 week's time or 2 weeks' time. So I was wondering, because we hadn't heard anything from Chris or anyone about, you know, we might need A, B, and C. And so that's why I brought this discussion up, because I'm trying to understand if that's the way it usually happens, or if I need to check in, or because we're on such a tight budget, I'm a little concerned with us really sticking closely to what's going on and knowing ahead of time. Does that make any sense to you?
As far as, is there,
Well, one of them was the signs, and I think that was like $7,000. And so I was like, holy crud, that's a
for
lot.
purchasing sign?
No, for putting them in.
So it should have been 34.
Was it 34? Okay, so that was
For
that.
the day, and that's, some of that should get absorbed into this paving project, because we have to do a full town detour. And these are signs that we had purchased prior. So I
Okay.
hired Lafayette to come and install them, because trying to get a sign in the ground around here is near possible.
Mhm.
So that's what that figure was. I don't believe it should have been any more than 34,
And then there,
3,500.
and then there was, well, maybe that I'm adding two of them together, because there was another one that was, oh, I can't remember exactly what the bill was off the top of my head. I asked Jeanette. Do you remember the bill I asked you about?
Was it the last big culvert?
Culvert bill,
So
yeah.
3 foot culverts.
Yeah.
So I don't know off the top of my head. I could have looked if I had known this was on the agenda. But what our culvert budget is, 7,500 or 7,000, somewhere around there. Again, a lot of the culvert purchases are for the paving project. Typically, we stay pretty close to the budget.
So those will be absorbed into that, along with the signs.
Yes, should be,
Okay.
I believe, or however it works out.
And so in the future, if it's like, if we have like big ticket items, and then is it something that Chris would let us know about, or how does that work?
I don't know the specific dollar amount. I know when Jed was on board, I think he was the one that passed the motion. the purchasing policy, I think, was increased to 7,000 maybe
Was it?
on my end. So if there's something up to that amount, typically I could order it without any sort of
Okay, yeah.
authorization, I guess, on the select board's part. But I had expressed at that point that got changed, that if there was a large dollar amount item, even several $1,000s, I would typically come to the board and
It's-
say, look, this is what is going on. As far as the culverts, I never have, or paving, just because it's something that kind of has to happen
Right.
to fall into play. But if it's something out of the box,
Mhm.
something that we just, we want to do this, then obviously that would be brought up. Something that's on the agenda to get done, or not on the agenda, but on the horizon as far as projects in the town, that stuff typically we just kind of move along with. But anything
Right.
unseen, I would bring to the
Right.
board.
And so when you guys are looking at the budget as well to see how much money we have in that.
We do
so
from
that-
time to time. Jeanette
Yeah.
would literally just like last week reached out and said, look, things are not
Right.
headed in the right direction.
Right, that's
Really
what-
need
that's-
to tighten
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So she sent me a copy of the budget so we can see kind of where we fall.
Mhm.
The typical things that get us are in the spring, usually I bring in several hundred yards of gravel for mud season.
Right,
So we stockpiled plant mix, which is larger stone, Surepack, which
Right.
is smaller
Right.
stone. Late this winter, early this spring, we didn't use much. So now we're gonna use that in road maintenance.
Mhm.
So you still have to pay for it.
right,
And it's kind of late in the season, so usually that line item on Surepack or gravel's already high
Mhm.
from the summertime. A lot of times we have to put it out. This year, we don't have to, so we're just starting to do that now. So there's things that, we can tighten up on, I think, and there's other things that are just kind of unknown
right,
that we've done historically in the past, and it's kind of the way that it works out. If we don't put it up and we need it, then you're hustling and you can't get it.
right, right.
So
No, I
we always
understand that.
stockpile
Right.
stuff
Yeah.
just on thinking that
Right.
we're gonna have a mud season. And sometimes you get hit hard, and sometimes you don't.
And sometimes you're lucky and you can use it come spring.
For other
Yeah.
things. I mean, we always have roads that need to be
Mhm.
brought up as far as gravel wise, so we'll use it. It's just budgeting for it. It's difficult as that comes in.
And so do we have a written policy that I haven't seen? And I should
You've
have
seen
seen?
it, but we do have one,
Yeah.
so yes, and yes, you've seen it.
So I need
And I
to
think I emailed it after the last meeting.
familiarize myself with it a little more. You probably did.
According to the most recent one that I have that I see in writing is no one should be doing anything over $500 without prior approval. So, I'm sorry, can I add to
Yes.
my thoughts? I think the breakdown is occurring because Chris Plum would meet with you Monday mornings and then come over here and sign invoices, and then as the road commissioner, talk to the rest of the people around
Right,
this
so you
table
play
every meeting.
both isnds.
He
You're
isn't-
not seeing it, right?
We're not,
Right.
yeah.
He isn't able to or hasn't been regularly at the meetings, isn't communicating with the board.
Right.
So there's a big gap, and I'm getting invoices to pass along that I don't know anything about.
Right.
And normally, as I saw them, I would talk to Chris, so at least I had the information
idea.
if it didn't come up at the meeting, or I could say, hey, don't forget about this invoice that came in and you wanted to tell everybody.
Right.
So we've got a communication gap.
Gap in the middle. Okay.
Yeah, and so what happens with me, and I'm not trying to fault anyone here or point fingers, is that I look at the invoices and I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to ask about these.
Right.
Because I haven't heard about
Chris has
them.
already been informed and
Right,
knows.
right.
Yeah, or
So-
had known in the past.
So, what would you suggest that I do to have more?
We'll just
knowledge
either
ahead of
have to-
time,
I
or-
know Josh is interested in taking over that road, not road foreman, the road commissioner position. Maybe he and Chris need to collaborate a little bit, and then he can be kind of the middle guy as Chris has been in the past. Or I can always contact you or try to come to the meetings more.
Yeah.
However
Now, if you bring a
works.
cup of coffee at 7 a.m. Monday morning,
Yeah,
where the meeting of the minds happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right, well, thank
Yeah,
you
but
for
that's
that.
hard. Chris, I mean, Chris
No,
is,
I know, it's just
Chris has
your
always
habit.
worked in the business where you
Right.
kind of have that morning meeting and you
Right.
talk
Right.
about things
Yeah.
that are happening, and to put that on you to say, oh, you got to come to the
No,
town.
I mean,
garage
I
at
was
7 in the
teasing
morning.
more
I would
than
never
anything,
do
but
that,
that's
you know?
why.
You don't want me there at 7 in the morning. And my coffee's
I
gonna be a
don't
latte, and, you know.
But
No,
but
it's
no,
not.
it has certainly been convenient
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
Chris
Yeah.
play both of those roles.
Right. Well, and so what
It's
I,
caused problems in the past too.
yeah, but what happens
Yeah,
with me
yeah.
is that I end up with invoices that I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm supposed to ask about them, not just sign them.
Oh, yeah, for
So
sure.
so that's, you know, my role. So if we can figure out like a way to make it work, whether it be Josh kind of stepping in and helping Chris to do whatever.
Right.
Why don't you talk to them about it, and then we'll go
Sure.
from there. Does anyone have any questions other than what I've just brought up? Melissa?
I would just say, kind of, that's a good idea, like that I say they, you boys
Yeah.
need to get her in the loop real quick
Right.
all the time.
Right.
That's what I think.
Well, It's just hard for me.
Or as a backup, the woman over here who's writing the checks.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because when
Right.
I open those envelopes and don't expect them, I
Right.
start going,
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
because
especially
end of a
late,
fiscal
especially
year.
late season in the fiscal year.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
right.
Yeah,
So-
those culverts, for instance, the 3-footers have been on order for a long time. They just didn't have them in stock. But
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't make it any easier when the bill comes, I understand.
No, and then and if Jeanette did know, then when I ask her, she wouldn't be like, oh, what?
Right.
So, anyways, all right. Thank you. The date of our next meeting. You're gonna stick around for the road commissioners report,
Yeah,
right?
I'll be
Okay.
here
So,
for that.
so moving on to the next, the date of our next meeting. Yes, Susan.
I know I definitely can't come, and so that's kind of why I kind of floated the question, how does it sit for the other members? I mean,
I'm game for whatever anyone wants to do.
I don't need to be at every meeting, but I just happen to know I can't come. And then I was wondering, I wondered if other people would prefer not to come on Memorial Day, so.
I would prefer
And
not to come on Memorial
probably
Day.
the TV crew, it's not really gonna be convenient for them. They probably don't work that day.
Melissa?
So I'll move that we make it the next day. Can we do it the Tuesday instead of the Monday? Like the next day, would that be the 27th?
yeah, Tuesday the 27th.
I make a motion that we move the next meeting to Tuesday the 27th.
Second.
All those in favor?
I
Thank you. All right, moving on to the road commissioners report. Wasn't it?
Good thing I
It's
didn't
zipping
walk
right
out
through.
2 minutes ago. I don't think we have a whole lot. Palmer's thinking end of this month. He didn't give me an exact date to start the work up on the Oxbow. That cemetery job has been completed up there, Middletown Road Cemetery, and Hank's happy with it. I think that's really about it.
Okay,
New truck's lettered up,
Yeah.
ready to go.
looks nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
So I was wondering, now that we're at this portion, when we should start to look at the roads and,
We're talking about the driveway.
Yes,
Possible.
right,
Be possible, anytime.
anytime.
Oh,
I'll have to look at that whole list again. It's been kind of off my mind through the winter, so.
Right. Susan?
it's kind of part B, culvert engineering bids. As soon as I saw that, I referred to the list that you had supplied to us, and Davis Road is on is on the list of a road that we might want to have a site visit. And just to echo what Chad said, it's not the most enjoyable duty that the select board has, but just as a fair, just in terms of fairness with the other roads that we looked at last year, I wanted to see if you had an updated list of recommendations of roads we look at?
I don't, I think we just kinda
Is
had
this an
that.
extra too?
Yeah, well, I have the original
Last
one.
time before that we were looking at.
Yeah,
And I know we were kind of discussing, one house roads with the property being owned by the homeowner as kind of a priority. And I think we might be through those, maybe Davis. I'd have to look for sure.
I have a copy of it. Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
got
Oh,
one too,
okay.
but I
You
don't,
have to look at a tax map.
as far as the property owners. I know the town of Rockingham did that a number of years ago. They went through and did the same thing that we're doing, and that was their top priority was one house and that they owned all the property on both sides of the road. And
So
then it
like-
kind of fizzled out at the end of that.
So
So
it's Simmons. Road.
Simmons, I was gonna say
Simmons.
Simmons is
So
also,
maybe
right?
Simmons, Dave, actually, I don't think Simmons because there's, if you include the house at the bottom, and then there's a log home.
Yeah, but they don't have access.
Just
They were denied
Is it-
access off that road.
Yeah, but if your property still goes to the road, you're still a property of butter.
Well, if
regardless
they
you
abut the
have-
road, how come they were denied access?
Well, that, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no
So they obviously, there's clearly, they don't, and that's why they have to do that other driveway.
Right.
Right.
So there's really one homeowner on there.
There's one homeowner on the
One
road.
owns both sides.
I don't know the specifics of that. But yeah, I think maybe Davis and possibly Simmons, the way Jed's talking.
Susan?
Is the situation up at East Hill Farm different because there's so many different houses, but it's all the same property owner?
East Hill Farm, Bliss's.
Yeah.
What road would you be, I don't,
Which
you're asking about Wall Road?
No, the whole loop. Well, I mean, up till a
You
few
found
years
it?
ago, that was town maintained.
It still is.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking
But
about.
around Bliss's, yeah. Yeah, I don't even think I put that on there, did I?
No, it's not
No.
on there, but
Yeah,
that is a
so-
good one to think about.
Right, that's another good possibility. I know
Even
I
though
did
there's-
ask John about, getting a road sign up there, especially for the whole 911 thing was coming into play.
Because what, there's 6 or 8
He really
roads?
didn't want a road sign because he thought it would open it up to more traffic,
Hmm.
which,
But, and,
you know what I mean? I don't know the name of the road. I know Wall Road, they called it, but I believe Wall Road is the
Yeah, it
the
goes,
spur road
yeah,
off
yeah.
of the loop that goes
Right.
down to the residence way down below. So I don't actually know the name of the road.
and that's kind of what we're running into is people don't want access for anyone on the
They want it
road.
maintained,
but
but
they
don't
want it maintained
Israel
and-
Road was a
yeah.
prime example. They didn't want anybody out there, but they wanted
Right.
it maintained.
Susan?
but the, regardless of when we do the site visits, the culvert, I was really impressed last year when we did have to change reclassify the roads, that you were very clear that you were going to leave everything in tip-top condition.
Yeah, we've
And
been graveling the roads, we've been trying to update the culverts if they need to be brought up to the minimum size, which is a standard that we follow. Because I don't wanna say, Jed's road now is on him and next year he's got 3 culverts. That's just
Right.
not fair to me. We've been maintaining it all these years to just hand that off on to him. It just doesn't feel right to me.
No.
So,
And as a board member, I would agree with you on that.
yeah, I
This
mean,
is
the
the Bliss
end
loop.
result is up to you guys, but
And
I
it does
still
indicate
have a
that's
job
class
to do
3.
to that point. So.
the other agenda item that it seems like it's merging, but, well, I guess we'll just wait for the,
Because I think
For
you're
the
gonna make
6
a
feet.
really good point in a moment here.
okay.
So-
And there certainly are many other roads in town. We're just going off the top of our heads of one, at least I am, of ones that I happen to be familiar with. But I think in the interest of fairness, and we did come up with different conclusions after very thoughtful consideration of each road. So, but I mean, there's certainly other roads. I don't know every road in town.
I think we got the list pretty good. I think it was Biancanella Road that you had brought up that for whatever reason it just had totally slipped my mind. So certainly if something comes up, let me know what you think. But I think by looking at the list, most of like the one house roads we've been calling them, I believe we have on this list.
Codere Road has that big newish barn looking house, and then at the end it's got, is
So it's
that,
not, actually the
That's
big
a
place
different-
that you see is off from Steinley Road. Codere just has the one that has, Chris.
Bernie.
Megan, yeah.
so that big kind of newish
Doesn't
thing,
come off.
it doesn't go on
That's on
Codere
Steinley.
Road? Oh,
That's on
interesting.
Steinley
I'm
Road.
so surprised, I thought it did.
Nope.
So would anyone like to make a motion that we revisit this, and when?
I'll move that we maybe put on the next meeting, that we add to the agenda of the next meeting, that we decide on starting up the sort of site visitations on these roads. We'll decide which ones next time that we're going to visit, and then we can put that out there, because we do need to continue forward with this. That's my motion.
Go ahead, I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So make a decision when to revisit these roads on the 28th.
On the
On the 27th.
27th.
And maybe,
Or what road
There's
would
a
be
month-
next?
Would be
Yeah,
next.
there's a month, you have
Doesn't have
to
a
warn
30-day
it
warning.
for
I
a
won't,
month.
I can't make that meeting, I'll be on vacation, but,
Okay.
I can have Josh or somebody sit in on that if we need to. If not, if it's just a talk amongst you guys of like when we'll get started back up, probably wouldn't be crucial one of us be here anyhow. Seems like it would be more up to the board.
and so how much of it,
30 days,
30
public
days.
warning for the site visit, so
Okay.
that would put it at
so
the
we'll
end
put
of
it on the
June
agenda for the next agenda, and then 30
to set
days
your warning and your
to
date.
set our warning and date. All right, and you will not be here, but Josh could sit.
If
And
you
if
guys
you want-
need somebody here, I'll just pass it along if it, one of the guys most likely to be here. Unless something crazy happens and they do it.
Melissa?
I also wonder if we don't want you to, at some point, I know you're super busy, and maybe we all do it too, but sort of look at the list that we have and then start just thinking
Trying to
about,
prioritize or
Right.
something.
and also, is there something we're missing here, and or, you know, again, because we're basically just looking to understand where are we plowing people's driveways
Right.
and having taxpayers pay for that, you know, because we don't want to do that. I mean, we don't want to do
It's
that.
not just the plowing, like Simmons,
The main-
during the flood, how much money went into that road?
It's the
Right.
money that-
Right.
I mean, 20,000.
So maybe, Charlie, just that you guys would be thinking about anything else that needs to be added here. And,
Right.
and for, whether it's a, you know, weird cutoff, or it's like, especially when you start thinking about, like Robin said, the idea that, you know, if you have a road that the town is maintaining and yet there are private signs all over it and nobody's welcome to go there ever, and yet there it is, you know? So maybe just so that we can get, if we need to have more on the list or however that works.
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next item, which is the culvert engineering bids for Davis Road. One of the things that Davis Road is on the list, so it's interesting we're talking about that right now. And it's a good conversation, I think. So what can you tell us about the engineering bids? We have one?
We got one.
We have one bid, so we've got one bid. Guess that's.
One additional, is that Everett?
No, this
That's
is,
Everett.
this is Everett and only Everett.
So Everett has done the bulk of the engineering for any large, like box culverts or any large culvert projects in town. However that's worked out, I don't really know, it's just kind of been that way, but we did three, Amadid did three a few years ago, Simmons Road that crosses over on Simmons Road, Plum Road. The North Hill project a couple of years ago. Where else, Jed? There might have been one more.
Yeah, it was North Hill, yeah, I remember he did that.
possibly the one that Crackle Box over by varies. I don't know that 100%.
So
I don't think so.
with some of these roads that we're thinking about, well, any of the roads for that matter, that need to have an engineered culvert, are there any others, or are they just piece by piece?
Any others?
Any others that we can look at? Because I'm wondering, okay, so if we're only getting one bid from him, if we had 4 different culverts that he needs to look at,
So it
would
has
we
to
be?
specific
Per
for
culvert.
him, because he's engineering wetlands, setbacks, property abutters. He hires a surveyor to
Mhm.
come in. He lines up the construction companies to bid on it. He's got a big list of people that he's confident.
So it is piece, it's
So
piece
it
by
has to be
piece.
specific to the
Yeah.
site.
It can't be. Jeanette?
Well, the other thing is, please don't forget that we are eligible for a structures grant that originally we were gonna use to work on the deck of the Boynton Hollow Bridge and the campground bridge, and that got moved so that we could replace this culvert because, Scott
no
Jensen,
bids.
the water engineer that came after the flood, said, oh my gosh, this culvert is not adequate, we have to replace it. So we were fortunate that the structures grant could move over to that and will cover, I believe, the majority of the
I would
costs,
think- I would
is my
think so.
understanding. So just make sure.
Including the new engineering?
Yes.
I would believe so.
All of that
Yeah.
falls under that grant. And one of the reasons, so right now it is a class 3 road. It doesn't matter that it might be considered for
Right.
declassification later. It is currently a class 3 road and we have to replace that culvert.
And it would be,
We will not get any FEMA money until we replace that culvert.
good
because it's
timing also.
Inadequate, yeah.
I didn't come here to get involved.
That's all right. No, join in.
But I just remember from history, But isn't that culvert is the result of, because there's a pond that was added up
Yeah.
above?
So the pond that was above was on Moose Walk, which
Yes.
was Urbino's property, and the flood took his road out, which contributed to Davis Road being washed away.
But if that pond
He's-
wasn't there,
He's now changed it so that pond will never hold water.
Oh, okay.
The culverts are at a lower elevation.
That-
So there will be no water held back. There's no way for him to block the water.
I wouldn't call it a pond. It's an old beaver dam, and it's been there absolutely forever. It's not
Okay.
like somebody made a
I'm just
pond.
curious.
It's been a beaver dam since before we were born.
Okay.
But the culvert that drained through his driveway
yeah.
was much higher pre-flood. See, now there's three.
Yeah, he put in 3
There's
boxes.
3 2-foot culverts or 3 3-foot culverts at a much, like 3 or 4 feet lower than the elevation they were before. So it's never gonna be a pond. It would still be a wetland, but it's not gonna be a substantial amount of water that could cause damage in the future.
But the other culvert now is still required.
Yeah, so we put it back to pre-flood condition. We put a 5-foot plastic in, it was like a 5-foot boiler pipe, riveted steel pipe that was there that had failed. And it's just doesn't meet the hydraulic study for the area, even with it not being a pond. I know what you're asking.
Yeah.
So even though that's changed, it's still like square acres and watershed. There's a lot of factors that are involved.
So we need a motion on this bid. It's the only bid we have.
I move that we accept the bid.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And now we're going to move on to old business and the MERP grant. I cannot thank Cindy Ingersoll enough for the work that she has done in helping us to put together an agreement with Architect that will not only be helpful for them, but also help for the town of Andover in really protecting us, looking out for our interests. She has been tremendous in putting that all together for us. We do have a draft. I think Jeanette sent it to everyone.
Mhm.
And now we are at the stage of signing that and, do we agree with it and signing it and sending it off. I feel really comfortable with what it says, and my opinion is to sign it and send it out. But I'm would like to hear anything anyone else has to say.
I make a motion that you sign it and send it out. I think we've looked at it plenty.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And again, Cindy's been great. Financial orders.
So this came in today's mail, this is just sort of generic. It's an estimate for some tree work, I guess, in a couple of the cemeteries, which Hank had been talking about, and I don't know if that's just for when budgeting time rolls around, but, I mean, you can take a look at it. I don't know that there's any action to take.
Okay.
Before you sign these, did you wanna look through the budget information that I gave everybody
Yes.
and ask any questions?
We skip over budget.
Well,
Yeah, we kind of just,
I rolled it
yeah.
under financial stuff.
Okay.
Just put it out ahead of time, so if you guys went through it and had any questions that I can answer for you, or
Does anyone want to start or have a question about any of this?
Well, it's the first time looking at it, and so I assume that in certain areas, like page 3, culverts was, year-to-date actual was, 3 times or so, 4 times what was planned. I assume that just happens based on what happens, right? And it's hard to predict.
Projects, so if it's a quote normal year,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have any like paving or any of that stuff going on,
Right.
we would usually fall within that budget.
Okay.
Fairly easy, even with the inflated prices of culverts. With the paving project, most of well, that doesn't break it down, but probably all but 40 feet of the 24-inch stuff is going to the paving issue that we have. And a good charge of the 18-inch pipes that we have on hand are going to prep for paving. So a lot of that, and I don't know exactly how things get worked out. I know some of it kind of gets absorbed into the, structures. Jeanette, is that kind of, I don't know the specifics, but that's how it's worked in the past, I believe. It can't stay
so it
in the
depends.
culverts,
Well,
right?
it does, and then in a lot of cases, we underspend in other things and we've overspent in culverts. If we get to a point where a project is costing a certain amount, there's certainly the possibility of paying for it out of the highway bridge fund, which is for bigger projects.
Right.
I didn't wanna do that right away until we see how much the paving is going to cost,
Right.
because there's only so much money in that bank account. So right now it's here and the budget isn't short, we still are ahead. I'm just, as I said in my year-over-year comparisons, this time last year without the flood and this time the year before, we would have had twice as much money on that bottom line as we do right now, and that's why I'm concerned.
Okay.
We've addressed, we're all being super careful with the timesheets. Robin spoke to Jonathan about maxing out at 16 hours a week right now.
And so one of the line items that I had looked at that had gone up quite a bit, and maybe, probably for good reason, is the repairs and maintenance of the town garage.
Repairs and maintenance.
Yeah.
So you guys had to have a door fixed, right?
Yeah, we had to have, we put an opener in because the openers are from 1977 and it wouldn't stop.
Oh.
So when its door came all the way down, it would just continue to run, so if you didn't catch it, we get nervous about that. So yeah, we hired that and then had to have the lower panels were starting to rust and deteriorate, so we had to have some lower panels installed.
So
All that door stuff, as you know, we talked prior,
right.
is the prices are crazy.
And so is that something we can hold off on because we do have the MERP grant coming and part of that?
That's already been, most of that stuff's already been taken care of.
Usually stuff that falls under those are, if we go over budget, it's because there was an emergency. It's just like the total you're looking at for the town hall. The plumber got in there and he
That
was
was gonna
going
be
in
my
to
next.
fix one thing and he found 8 valves that were all corroded that had the potential for leaking, and because no one goes in that building, if any of those started to leak, we'd be deep in water on those wood floors, and it would be crazy.
He
It's
literally
expensive.
told me that the green corrosion that you could see was a small leak already. So he said they are leaking, that's why you're seeing it.
So while he was in there, he did that. He found that the bottom of the pressure tank was completely corroded and really just needed to be replaced. And we also discovered that there's an outside hose bib that apparently had gotten hit by ice and had been running. And we could all hear the noise, but nobody knew there was an outside faucet, and it didn't have an interior shutoff valve. So he added that while he was there, so all that added up. But again, it was all emergency stuff that we just wouldn't have.
I think it was this year that the well itself was leaking. There was a crack at the pitless.
Oh, that's right, we had
So
to
we
do
did
that pipe out
too.
to
It's
the
like,
well.
It's everything compounds so quickly.
It does, especially in these old buildings.
But yeah, my question was, there's always gonna be unpredictability. This is my first time looking at this, so I'm just guessing this is pretty normal. That every year things come up.
They do, like the culverts that you brought up specifically, that's not normal. That's way above what you typically would see.
Okay.
Like, I think, what was it, 28,000 out of a $7,000, but that's unheard of.
The last time we had that was when they did Hilltop.
Right.
Yeah, and it was the same reason, because we had 9 culverts to change before we got paid. So it all,
And
that's,
the cutting and the, that's
Yeah.
the way it ended
Oh,
up.
yeah.
And then that one was so
Pavement, cutting,
deep,
that
Right.
so yeah, we ended up,
and
that was the
subcontracting.
last time that the culverts became an issue.
So you'll see that every,
And the other thing too that's hard, Rich, is if you think about the cadence that we're on, we're guessing at these numbers in November which means we're only barely 6 months through the fiscal year we're in, and we're trying to think of what the total might be to budget appropriately and what costs might go up a year from then. So it's a really fun game of dartboards.
Because some years we've saved on culverts, we haven't gone.
Right,
We
exactly,
haven't gone through
yeah.
the budget.
Right. So definitely you'll see those kinds of over budget here, under budget here, we might think we need something here, and again, we also are mindful of it, so, you know, I won't buy as many stamps if we need I bring paper from home.
Well, I would hate to see us go over budget, so,
Well, and that's the thing, we don't want a budget deficit, so if we get to that point, then certainly I will put those culvert expenses to the highway bridge fund instead, because it is a major project that we hadn't necessarily accounted for, when you guys built the budget a year and a half ago.
that wouldn't be ideal, but with the quote that we got from Fuller for the paving and say, I don't know what the culverts were, 20, what'd you say it was? Sorry, Rich.
It'll be just about what's in
27.
that bank account.
So what, yeah, I was
it'll be
gonna say,
close, so
but
it's
it would,
possible.
so if we
Yep.
had to do that, it would work, it would make the
Right.
numbers work.
I think it would be okay, and, you know, our fiscal year starts July 1st, and as soon as
27.
we start bringing in some municipal tax money, I start making those budgeted transfers from the general fund to the highway fund and to the capital equipment fund, so that immediately will be an influx of $100,000 into the highway bridge fund as soon as I get tax money rolling in. So it's kind of a little move the money game. Just wanted you to be aware.
okay.
Got my eye on it.
All right, then back to correspondence.
So yeah, I think that probably Hank requested that, as you had talked when he was here last time. You talked about saying, okay, when we're ready to budget, let us know, because you keep asking for more money, but you don't tell us what for.
So,
So we can hang on to it.
right, I think we should hang on to this, and if it does, it's tree service, and if it does go out, I would say we would put it out to bid, because that's quite a bit of money. It's $4,800. So if Hank has given us an idea of what we need, then from there, I would think we would, at the time, we'll wait until later, put it out to bid. But I appreciate that he has contacted someone. Do you want to hold on to that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. So financials.
Thank you. Oh, whoops, sorry.
Sorry.
Put them so you can read them. Jeanette, I don't have to sign these? The meeting minutes?
You should, you're here.
Yeah. I just wondered why, because I had approved them. Or maybe I should have signed them earlier.
No, I usually don't send them out till before the meeting anyway. Those you don't sign
Right.
because you signed
Right, because I already
invoices.
signed the invoices.
You're welcome. Good thing we're missing somebody here, maybe Rich.
We all three have signatures that can be read.
Right?
I don't. I actually do. It depends on when I'm signing or what I'm signing. I can read it.
There you go.
Where's that one?
And only I sign this one. Am I correct? Or is that
Depends on,
something you
some of them
sign?
are different. I don't know, see what the, does the last page say anything?
It has his name.
There you
Everett's
go, Robin.
name.
There's
Town of
something you
Andover.
sign.
The client is Town of Andover, so. Did I sign it all?
Better you than me.
That's why you get the big dollar.
Yeah, right? That's why you can't read my signature. 10 years from now, who the heck was that? What does that say? What is today's date? Okay. Well, somebody want to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Could we, talk about correspondence for just a minute?
Oh, sure.
We have a thank you note from the Chester Snowmobile Club for allowing them to use the roads that they asked for permission for. And as always, they have invited everybody to their annual appreciation barbecue. It's May 31st, right in the Chester Rec Park on Lover's Lane where the volleyball courts are, from 11 to 2. So bring your whole family and they'll feed everybody and say thank you, which is always very nice of them. And that's it.
All right, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.